name is Carissa Brewster, staff writer for Whitman Partners. Welcome to 40 Fast and Future Leaders of Surgical Services 2021. Today's guest is Shawn Craddock. Congratulations on being recognized as one of our 40 Fast and Future Leaders.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Before we get started, what is your current position and at what facility?
Sure, I am the Administrative Director for Perioperative and Surgical Services at Augusta Health.
Okay, so we'll start with sort of the pipeline from nurse to manager to director. There's no specific path for that. I know that people come to it in different ways. For you, what were the steps or training do you recommend, and how did that happen for you?
Sure. So I'll give you my path, and then I'll say what I recommend, because I don't necessarily recommend my path. So I was an Army nurse to start off with, and so started my career in the U.S. Army. Went to an OR nursing course that the Army has to get my nursing training in the OR. And then when it was time for me to get out of the Army, started looking around for jobs. I had at that point a few years of leadership experience and a nursing background, as well as a combat arms background. So I thought, I can put all of that to use and let me see what I can do and try to break into civilian healthcare leadership. And so I interviewed for a job at Loudon. It was then Loudon Hospital. Now it's Inova Loudon Hospital. Interviewed via the computer from Baghdad. And that was my first interview. And then when I finally got home from Baghdad, did a follow-up interview on site and got hired there as a clinical specialist. And so that was the time when you didn't have to have a registration as a clinical nurse specialist. And so I was a clinical specialist there for about 5 years. And there was a lot of change and things that happened during that time. And it ended up that my role expanded into some of the leadership side, both for the ambulatory surgery center that we had built and on the main hospital side when my boss left the organization, and we had a series of interims that had come in prior to hiring a permanent director there. And so I stepped into some of those roles temporarily. And when all was said and done and we had found a permanent director, I said to myself, I've been doing this. I may as well go do this permanently and get paid for it. So started looking for director level jobs and, got really lucky and found a director job at a smaller hospital, Prince William Hospital in Northern Virginia. It's now, I believe the official title is Novant UVA Prince William Hospital or something to that effect. So it was a 4-room OR, so it was a small OR operation. And I thought, hey, this will be a great place to cut my teeth as a director and really hone and learn and be ready to move on to something bigger and better after that. And so I ended up getting that position. And so I was the director there of, like I said, a small OR, 4 rooms. I only have one manager. And so that tells you kind of the scope of the operation that we did. And then from there, I was there about 5 years and decided it was time for me to advance my career. By this point, I had completed my master's degree. I also held my specialty certification as an OR nurse. And during my time at Prince William, also finished up my specialty certification as a nurse executive. And so I kept building on the resume, so to speak, getting that additional training, the additional skill set and knowledge in order to move up. And as like I said, after about 5 years there, I thought, it's time for me to progress to a larger organization, somewhere where I can really start making the move to what my end goal was, which at that time was to be a chief nursing officer. And so found a position at Centera RMH Hospital. It was a 12-room OR at the time, so considerably bigger than what I was used to. Took that position and stayed there for around 7 years. to the point where by the time I left, we were at 14 ORs, much busier than when I got there. And so decided in late 2019 that it was time for me to look for that next growth opportunity. And it just so happened that a position about 20 miles south of where I was came open. It was a new position, an administrative director position. And so I thought, man, this is a perfect timing, a little serendipity at work, and applied for that position. Ended up getting that, and here I am today, almost 2 years later, as an administrative director. And so, um, along the path from director to administrative director, I also completed my doctoral degree. So I hold a DNP, um, and maintained my certifications, of course. And so again, just kept building and growing in order to advance myself, my knowledge, and then move up in my career. Now, as far as a path that I would recommend taking, that may not be it. I think I skipped a step in there somewhere, and that was nurse manager. I really feel, you should progress in leadership, and so coming out of a staff role, it's probably best to start as a charge nurse or a coordinator of some sort, get a little bit of that leadership experience under your belt, and then I always recommend progress into a manager position or an educator position, one of those what I call the lower mid-level positions, and then from there work your way into the director position. I've grown a lot of folks in that direction across my career, and I think that path is really successful. And it also gives you time to complete the necessary degrees and certifications along the way, so you don't feel like you were rushing. At certain points in my career, I felt like I was rushing to do the next thing, and so I'd recommend, not rushing, taking your time. But with that said, I did take over a director position at the ripe old age of 30, when everyone around me was in their 50s. And so it was a unique path. But again, it's okay to slow down a little bit and take your time to really learn and build your skills.
Yeah, was there any tension between you and the people that were in their 50s at the time?
Most definitely. One of them actually said to me, "My kids are older than you." I also heard, "You can't possibly know what you're doing. You're too young." And so, I think part of the drive and part of what made me successful was I took that negativity and I, wanted to show the naysayers that they were wrong. Um, and so, it started off as a man in nursing. I mean, you've got something to prove in nursing school. Um, and then I think that continues, and being young and male, breaking into leadership in a non-male dominated profession, it had its challenges. And I think part of that is what made me succeed, is that drive and that motivation from people telling me that I couldn't do it.
Throughout your career, did you have a mentor? And if so, how did they help you? And have you mentored anyone yourself?
Sure. So I've had a couple of really great mentors. In fact, I've had three that I can think of. One was my first mentor in the Army. His name was Colonel John Austin, and he was the OR director when I started in the OR in the Army. And he was the type of leader that everyone wanted to work for. And so, getting spots in the OR were very difficult at that time. And part of that was everyone wanted to work for him. He was just that kind of leader. He was firm, he followed the policies, but he was also fair. He treated everyone equally. His decisions were just. And so even when it didn't fall your way, you understood that there was a larger reason to the decisions that he was making, and they fit the overall good of everyone there. And so, one may not go your way, the rest of them did. And, he taught me that, to be a good leader, you're not there to please everyone. You're there to make decisions based on the hierarchy of what he felt was important. And I strongly agree with his principles. Number one is the patient. Number two is the staff, and then number three is everyone else that comes in and out of the department. And so, that was a big learning experience for me, and he really gave me that foundation of where the priorities are as a leader. From there, I'd have to say that Barbara McDonald was another huge influence in my career, and she was my boss at Inova Loudon. And again, she was just a director that everyone wanted to work for. She had great personality, held you accountable, but at the same time, you could go to her and say, I have a problem, I don't know what to do, and she would be glad to help you with that. And really, it was her that first looked at me and said, "You're going to be a director." And I looked at her and said, I don't want to do that. That I'm not interested. And she said, "Well, your time with me is going to be getting you ready for that next step." And she did just that, which was amazing. And then, the third person that I count as a mentor during my career, um, and this was a little more indirect because I didn't work for her or directly with her, which I think created a unique experience. She worked in the same organization when I was at Loudon, but at a different hospital. And her name is Patricia Seaford, who is well known within the OR community. And I consider her to not only be a mentor, but also a friend. And she's just one of the most brilliant OR minds that I think we've seen. Absolutely. She's written textbooks. Um, she everywhere she goes basically holds court. People flock to her. They want to learn from her and to gain the experience of just being around such a brilliant mind. Um, and I think what she gave me in my career was the realization that you're not always going to make the right decision and you're not always going to know the right thing to do at the time, but you've got to tap into your resources. You've got to go look for the answers. You've got to find out from people who know more than you do in order to be successful. And one of the pivotal points in my career with her is we were all in a meeting, and at the time I was doing some work within the Inova Learning Network, running the Periop 101 for Inova Loudon. And so we would all come together from all the different hospitals and discuss what was next and what we were doing, what worked and what didn't. And I had this brilliant idea. I don't remember what it was, but it was absolutely brilliant. And so I said the idea, and she put her pen down and she looked at me and she goes, "Shawn, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say." and, and I just stopped. Of course, I had a slightly bruised ego, but I stopped and I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, "Oh, she's right. That's really stupid." And so, those three folks I think shaped me as a leader and my career the most.
That's great. It's actually kind of awesome to have someone that mentors you that doesn't tell you what you want to hear all the time,
Right.
which is an
Hmm.
important piece. Have you had the opportunity to mentor anyone yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, I believe that it's part of our duty as leaders to mentor the next group of leaders. Um, I think the biggest travesty in leadership is if you don't mentor your replacement. Um, and so I take it upon myself, and I take it very seriously, mentoring the next group of leaders, not only at my organization, so that I'm not always going to be here, for whatever reason, and so someone's going to have to step in to take my place. Not only that, but also through the D&P work, the doctoral programs, particularly the one that I went to, James Madison University. I mentor other D&P students through that process and really try to lend my insight and background to help them be successful. So far, I've done that with two DMP students, and it's worked out very well. Both have been very successful. But I've also done that with, I'm going to say numerous leaders. I don't know the tally at this point, but between leaders in surgical services and leaders, outside of surgical services, if someone expresses an interest to grow and learn and develop, I gladly take that on with them. And so, again, I think it's part of our duty as leaders to mentor and grow the next generation of leaders. But also, I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing a younger nurse or a younger person who wants to get into leadership start to grow and become a leader even if they're not in a formal leadership position, and you just the satisfaction you get from looking at them and going, wow, they're going to do great things. And just to be a part of someone's life like that, I think is one of the greatest rewards that you can have as a leader.
Awesome. So, in your experience, how much communication is ideal between you and your boss with your day-to-day activities in the OR?
I think it depends on the day. There are some days that I think zero communication is ideal. And there are other days where I think there's not enough time in the day to communicate. I really think it just depends on your leadership style and the person you report to, their leadership style, and what is enough communication. I think it takes a little while to feel that out. I mean, I've been in this position now for almost 2 years, and I would say it took me the first year to really feel out where that sweet spot is in communication. I don't want to burden my leader by offering too much and telling her every little thing that happens, but at the same time, there are things that are going to move up the chain of command that she's going to need to know before they get to her. And I feel that she needs to hear that from me, not someone else when they say, hey, did you know? Or tell me about this. And so I really think you have to fill that out between yourself and your leader to determine where that sweet spot is. Um, in general, I don't think there's a such thing as over communicating.
I agree. Agreed. Um, have you ever found yourself at an organization thrown into antiquated systems or antiquated policies? And how did you navigate trying to phase them out, especially if people had no idea that they were antiquated?
Yeah, so I have been there before, where you come in and you look around, you go, okay, we're practicing surgery like we did 15 years ago, um, and you look at the policies and they're antiquated, like you said, and the answer when you say why do we do this is the nursing sacred cow of we've always done it that way. And there's nothing that gets a leader more fired up than the answer we've always done it that way. That doesn't make it right. I think the way you defeat that and the way I've had success is you have to bring, and I don't want to use the word education loosely because I think we blame everything on education at times, but I think you've got to really bring everyone up to speed. There's reasons why practice has evolved in the last 15 years, and there's reasons why the guidelines that we follow change on a yearly basis. It's because we're constantly learning and growing, and in the science, we learn more every year to refine what we do and to do it better. And so, step number one is just get everyone to see that there is a reason behind the differences in practice. And then step two is to get everyone to understand what that is. And you do that through, like an organization that I went to, I had to get the latest ARN recommendations and guidelines because the one that we had on the shelf was 5 years old. Well, OR nursing changes in 5 years like most industries change in a lifetime. So you've got to get the resources there for people. You got to help them understand, and then you just have to drive change. After that, it's everybody's got to get on board, or there's going to be some accountability issues that you have to deal with. And so it starts off with education and understanding, and it ends up with this is how we're going to do it here. And you can get on the bus that I'm driving, or the next bus is coming later.
Um, in an ideal world for you, what type of investments do you think the C-suite should have top of mind for the OR, particularly when it comes to efficiency?
Mhm. So, there's a lot of new things hitting the market that I just don't think ORs have caught up with yet. And while we're technology leaders in the hospital with terms of surgical robotics and integrated OR suites and those type of things, I still think we're behind software wise quite a bit. And so there's not many EMRs out there that are built or geared toward surgical services. So I think that's one. We've got to start investing in software packages that are going to help surgical services, recognizing that efficiency in the OR is extremely important and drives your revenue stream. And so the more efficient the OR is, the more money that we can make for the organization while taking great care of the community. And so we're going to take great care of the community, but we really need help with that software piece, that IT piece, if you will, really bringing EMRs into the 21st century for the OR. And even the best EMR that I've used in my career still wasn't quite there when it came to the OR. And so that's a huge one for us. I think the other investments are in people. I think human resources is probably our biggest resource. It's our most important resource that we have, and it's the one that we as leaders, regardless at whatever level, sometimes overlook. And I'm guilty of that myself. You know, sometimes you take for granted that the people are there doing the work. But you in this day and age, in particular with COVID and everything that's happening with travel organizations and the travel agencies pulling out OR nurses left and right from hospitals, and then charging the astronomical rates and those type of things. I think now more than ever, it's important that we develop creative compensation packages, creative incentive packages, and creative benefits packages. And I'm really proud to say that that's been a lot of the work that we've done here at this organization in the past 6 to 9 months, recognizing that these challenges are going to continue. We've developed some what I consider to be some very innovative incentive programs, around picking up an extra shift a week or taking extra call or all of those things that we're really hurting on right now. And so, like I said, I'm proud to say that we've been doing that work, and I think that all organizations across the country have to start looking at that more, especially from the C-suite, and recognizing that without the human resources, nothing else happens. And so we've got to be more creative as a healthcare industry for those type of issues with innovative pay, innovative benefits, and innovative incentive programs.
Yes. Um, how do you see the staffing shortage like panning out within the next year or two? I mean, obviously no one has a crystal ball, but
Right.
how is that gonna? I mean, paying travel nurses 200 an hour
Mhm.
is insane.
You, you nailed it. That's exactly what I'm paying right now. So it's hard to say. Like you said, no one has a crystal ball, but I will say this, and I'm gonna use an old cliche: it's gonna get worse before it gets better. That's the only thing I know for certain. And we've got a lot of challenges happening right now, and I don't know if you've read anything about the Great Resignation, but we're living in an unprecedented time in healthcare. We've had more people leave healthcare than at any other time in history, and I read something a couple of weeks ago that the nursing shortage in particular has increased 20% over the last year and a half. That's an astronomical, and it's completely unsustainable. We were staring down, I don't know, a 1 million nurse shortage in the next 10 years already, and now, that's practically going to double before we get there, unless we do something. And some of that is on nursing schools and training programs, but a lot of it is also on hospitals and being more creative and coming up with innovation and ways to not only recruit but retain the top talent that's out there, because unfortunately the top talent is leaving right now, and it puts us in a huge hole. So I'm not sure what the next 2 years holds, but I'm pretty sure it's going to get worse before it gets better. Um, but I think healthcare across not only the nation but across the world is going to have to start figuring these things out. And in order to do that, I think we've got to start having some really tough conversations about what the real problems are.
Hmm. The next question is kind of connected to that. What would be your wish list for your OR for 2022?
um, so I'm gonna write Santa Claus later and see if this works. But it would be top talent, highly qualified, already trained staff, ready to go, that just fell out of the sky and into my lap. That would be number one. Um, Number two, actually, I don't even know if there is a number two, to be honest with you right now. I think that's the thing that keeps me up at night. That's the thing I worry about the most. And so number one on my wish list is just the top talent. You know, we need that. We've got to have it. Our organization is not immune, just like no other one is in the country. You know, we're all having the same struggles right now. That's number one. Number two, and this is gonna, you know, probably everyone you've ever talked to has said this. Number two, I want COVID to go away. So if you gave me my ultimate wish, let's get rid of that thing and start over. Yeah, you know, maybe it's getting better. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. Um, and probably number three is I would really like for the communities at large, and that's every community that has a hospital that serves it, which is practically every community in this country. I'd really like for the people in the community to rebuild the relationship they have with the healthcare industry and healthcare workers in particular. You know, vaccines and vaccine mandates, and is it political? Is it not? Does it exist? Does it not? Are they tracking me with a microchip? You know, all of those things have really hurt the relationship, in my opinion, between healthcare workers and the communities we serve. And it's just not supposed to be that way. Um, you know, we're supposed to be the people trust, you know, the community should be trusting us. They should want us to be better. They should look to us in their greatest times of need. That relationship has to be maintained in order for this to work. And I feel like some of that relationship has been fractured over the course of the last 20 months.
What advice would you have for your younger self? So you talked about how when you went up from nurse to director, you kind of skipped a step. I don't know if you would truly go to your younger self and say, hey, don't do that. But is there anything else that you would tell your younger self?
Yeah, you know, so and this is a hard lesson I think for every leader to learn. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll all be here tomorrow. You know, when I was much younger in my career, you know, I was at work more than I wasn't, and you know, long hours. You know, the family was second fiddle, so to speak. Everything else came second, and you know, it took me having a heart attack at the age of 38, yeah, and really struggling through that to understand that it would be here tomorrow. And so that's what I would say to my younger self. Hey, look, dummy, you're gonna almost kill yourself doing this. It'll be there tomorrow. Um, thank God I've learned that now, and I try to pass that wisdom on. And I have leaders that work for me that haven't learned that yet. Um, I'm trying to push them in that direction, and you know, learn from my mistakes instead of making your own. You know, but I think that's the biggest thing. That's my biggest piece of advice. It'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
Last question.
Hmm?
What do you consider your superpower?
That's a good one. Um, I think it's, and you know, some people may not think this is a superpower, but I think my superpower is logic. I think through things. I think through problems. I try to use logic. Um, I don't get spun up in the emotional side of problems and issues. I try to take a step back, and you know, if I do feel myself getting emotional, and not passionate, I'm very passionate, but if I feel my emotions taking over to where I can't think through what's going on, I have to step back and reevaluate what I'm doing. So I think that's my superpower: the use of logic and remaining calm during crisis.
Thanks, Shawn, for joining us and accepting the nomination for 40 Fast and Future Leaders. I appreciate the work you do. I'm sure everyone does. I think all nurses are superheroes. So I know it's been a hard 20 months for everybody, and I just want to thank you so much and keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you, Carissa. I really appreciate you taking time with me today.
You're welcome.